Why do most human beings seem to have that intuitive sense that they ought to do good and shun evil? Why do we know what's good and what's evil? Is there an objective standard out there that tells us how we should behave as human beings? Let me share you a story about Frank and Dave, two friends that are having dinner, and as their conversation deepened, they ended up talking about religion. So Dave said, "I don't think one religion can be exclusively true. But Frank, it seems like you have found a center. You have found something that's true for you, and I think that's great." So Frank played along with the true for you but not for me premise and asked Dave, "What's true for you? What makes life meaningful to you?" Dave responded by saying, "Well, that's easy, making money and helping people." By the way, Dave is a very successful businessman, so Frank wanted to squeeze in more answers out of him. Frank said, "Dave, I know CEOs who have reached the pinnacle of business success. They've planned and achieved great things in their business life, but have planned nothing and achieved little in their personal lives. Now that they're facing retirement, they're asking themselves, now what?" Dave agreed and said, "Yeah, I know that most CEOs have experienced nasty divorces, mostly because they ignored their families in pursuit of money and success. But I'm not like that. I will not sacrifice my family for money, and in my business I want to help people as well." Frank commended him for his commitment to his family and his desire to help people, but the question still remained, why should we be faithful to our families? Who said we should help people? Is helping people a universal moral obligation? Or is it true for you but not for me? And to what end should we help them? Financially? Emotionally? Physically? Spiritually? Frank said, "Dave, if there's no moral standard, then life is nothing but a glorified Monopoly game. You acquire lots of money and lots of property, but when the game's over, it's all going back to the box. Is that what his life is all about?" Dave felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation and he quickly changed the subject. But his sense that he ought to help people was correct. He just had no way of justifying it. Why did he think we should help people? Where did he get this idea? Why do you and I, deep down, agree with him? So let's pause for a bit. Let me ask you a question. Are you like Dave? Don't you have this deep-seated sense of obligation that we all ought to help people? We all do. But why? See, the reason we believe we ought to do good rather than evil, the reason why we, like Dave, believe we should help people, is because there is a moral law that has been written on our hearts. In other words, there is a prescription to do good that has been given to all of humanity. Some people call this moral prescription conscience. Others call it natural law. Whatever you want to call it, the fact that a moral standard has been prescribed on the minds of all human beings points to a moral lawgiver, aka God. Every prescription has a prescriber, and moral law is no different. But is it really true that there is a moral law? The founding fathers of America thought so. As Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, nature's law is self-evident. You don't use reason to discover it. You just know it. This is why Dave hit a roadblock in his thinking. He knew helping people was the right thing to do, but he couldn't explain why without appealing to a standard outside of himself. Without an objective standard of meaning and morality, then life is meaningless and there's nothing absolutely right or wrong. Everything is merely a matter of opinion. Here's a quote from C.S. Lewis. Think of a country where people are admired for running away in battle, or when a man felt proud of double-crossing all the people who had been kindest to him. You might as well try to imagine a country where 2 plus 2 is 5. In other words, everyone knows there are absolute moral obligations. It's something that is binding on all people, at all times, in all places. An absolute moral law implies an absolute moral lawgiver, aka God. Without the moral law, we couldn't know justice or injustice. Perhaps the most popular argument against the existence of God is the presence and persistence of evil in the world. You'll hear this line often. There really is a good and just God. Why does he allow bad things to happen to good people? C.S. Lewis was once an atheist. He believed that all the injustice in the world confirmed his atheism. That is, until he thought about how he knew the world was unjust. He wrote, "As an atheist, my arguments against God was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust?" This realization led Lewis out of atheism and ultimately to Christianity. For evolutionists and atheists, their explanation of our sense of morality can be traced back to the evolution by natural selection. Morality is materially and genetically determined. It is based on inherited feelings or instincts. They assert that biological process of people passing their genes onto their offspring through thousands of generations inevitably gave rise to moral sentiments. This argument quickly falls apart because evolutionists and atheists assert that only materials exist, but materials don't have morality. How much does hate weigh? Is there an atom for love? What is the chemical compound of the murder molecule? These questions are meaningless because physical particles are not responsible for morality. If materials are solely responsible for morality, then Hitler had no real responsibility for what he did. He just had bad molecules. This is nonsense and everyone knows it. Human thoughts and transcendent moral laws are not material things any more than the laws of logic and mathematics are material things. They are immaterial entities that cannot be weighed or physically measured. As a result, they can be explained in material terms by natural selection or any other atheistic means. So let's summarize what we've covered so far. Fact number 1 is that there is an absolute standard of right and wrong, and that is written on the hearts of every human being. People may deny it, they may suppress it, their actions might contradict it, but their reactions reveal that they know it. Fact number 2 is that human beings don't determine right and wrong. We discover right and wrong. If humans determine right and wrong, then anyone would be right in asserting that rape, murder, and the Holocaust, or any other evil, is not really wrong. But we know those acts are wrong intuitively through our conscience, which are manifestations of the moral law. Fact number 3 is that atheists have no real basis for objective right and wrong. This does not mean that atheists are not moral or don't understand right from wrong. On the contrary, atheists can and do understand right from wrong because the moral law is written on their hearts just as on every other heart. But while they may believe in an objective right and wrong, they have no way of justifying such a belief unless they admit a moral lawgiver, at which point they cease being atheists.
So you reached the end of the video, and I do hope that you learned something from what I shared today. Majority of the stuff that I talked about can be found in this book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Dr. Frank Turek and the late Norman Geisler. Just like most of you guys who are watching this video, I had a lot of questions about morality and the truth about God's existence prior to me becoming a believer. And as I read the scriptures and delve more into the world of Christian apologetics, I'm starting to have a better understanding and clearer answers to those questions that I have. And I still continue to challenge myself with these questions, questions that are challenging the faith, questions about, life and people trying to disprove God and everything. I do enjoy those type of conversations. Now, why am I doing this? You might ask. Simple. You can find it on 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 to 16. I don't have it memorized at the top of my head, so I'm just going to read it off. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that ye have. But do this with gentleness and respect. Keep a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. So, there you have it. It's not enough that you believe in God, but you also have to make sure that you're able to explain those things, or perhaps, find a way to connect to people who don't necessarily believe in God, and hopefully you can plant seeds, and as time comes, then God will make those seeds grow. Who knows? But that's it for me today. Thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit that like button. Share this video if you think it's helpful. But that's it for me today. Thank you for your time. God bless you guys. See you. Bye.